Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are winding up this week with a look at some recent Star Wars news. But before we get into the latest, Jay, we want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media.
Absolutely. Super easy to find us. We are on Facebook and Instagram very conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So in case you couldn't tell by my voice, I've been recovering from a cold. And so you're going to have to deal with this voice for the next couple episodes until we record a fresh batch. And hopefully my voice is back to normal. Jay, how are you doing? Everything going okay?
Yeah, everything is great. I finally got all of my Christmas decorations up. I just put up the tree this last weekend. And of course, had to watch Attack of the Clones while I did it. So I am nothing if not a stickler for tradition. So that was amazing. And listening to some of Samuel Kim's renditions of Star Wars classics. So my favorite is The Mandalorian mixed with the Imperial March. Love that one. Like the Carol of the Bells thing that he does. Oh, so good. So good. But other than that, we're getting a lot of snow up here in the old OHIO. How about you guys?
No snow. It's been colder than usual so far this December. It's funny though. Last week, a lot of our news had to do with comments that Sean Levy and others were making about the status of Starfighter. And you brought up the whole season 5 of Stranger Things, and I made an offhanded remark that I never watched Stranger Things. That has changed. I've actually watched the first 2 episodes of season 1 of Stranger Things since then.
And what do you think?
I like it well enough. It's not quite what I expected. It's kind of like Star Wars in the way that, if you are aware at all of pop culture, something about Star Wars. You recognize a Star Wars image, or you recognize something about the Force or whatever. You don't have to know who all the characters are. You don't have to know all the names, but at its core, a little bit about Star Wars just from being out in public. That's just the way it is. And I'm, not oblivious. I've been to Dallas Fan Expo and other conventions where there are Stranger Things references and celebrities and stuff like that. Seen enough posts online that I have some idea of some of the things that are going on to Stranger Things. And so, I had a vague idea of who 11 was and, the Demigorgon and all that type of stuff and stuff like that. Okay. All that having been said, I think I was anticipating something slightly different in tone than what it is. And I don't even know how to explain this, is that, of course, I knew it was going to be a bit on the dark side because of what they're dealing with there. But the comedy element, there's a certain lightheartedness to it, especially when you're dealing with like kids as your protagonists, made me think that perhaps the tone would just be slightly different than what it is. But it's considerably more dramatic than what I was expecting, I think. Which is fine. It's good. I like it so far. And I was watching it with Beth and Alec, and because we just finished all 5 seasons of Only Murders in the Building, and we were looking for a new show to watch. But that having been said, I still was I was expecting something, and I hesitate to say this because I think people are going to think I'm incredibly naive, but the closer to Skeleton Crew, I guess, in tone.
I could see that.
And I think, having thought back on that, the reason is that when Skeleton Crew came out, so many people said, "Oh, Disney and Lucasfilm are chasing those Stranger Things dollars." Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that was a completely stupid comparison to make because it's not that at all. At least not based on the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's very dark. I need to go back and I need to rewatch it from the very beginning, and not to turn this into a Stranger Things podcast, but I just remember being a child of the '80s myself, that everything was so on point
Oh,
with
yeah.
a lot of the nostalgia, and I think that that's one of the big things that hooked me, at least, into the series originally, and now that we're into season 5 and I just finished the mid-season finale, and oh my gosh, I'm so glad I avoided spoilers, let's just put it that way. But,
Yeah.
it's just a very well cultivated show, and the way that it evolves is pretty cool. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say. You know,
Well, what's
you'll have
funny
to
about
stick
it.
with it.
Yeah, well, we're going to. We plan on watching more. I don't know exactly how this is gonna work out, but, or when I'll get to it again and stuff like that because there's just so much going on over the next several weeks. But the, one of the things that was funny is that we're watching it again, it was my wife and Beth, and then my youngest, Alec, who's at home. And he's like looking at us with like some of the things the kids were saying to each other. And I had to look at him as like, I hate to say it, man, but that's the way middle schoolers were back in the
Yep,
80s. It's not quite the sensibilities that we have from kids or anybody these days. But
yep. It's
yeah,
so
it was
true.
it was something. It was a nostalgia hit for sure on all that. But so anyway, like you said, I didn't want to make this into a Stranger Things uh, discussion or podcast, but since it's come up often enough with Sean Levy having done season 5 of Stranger Things and him doing Starfighter, and there's been so many references to it as of late, I just had to share
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But
Well, good. I'm
yeah,
glad you dipped your toes into the upside down, so we'll
yeah,
have to keep
yeah.
talking at some point.
That's one of the things I knew before we even got into the show is I'd heard enough references to the Upside Down, and then when 11 turned over the game board, I was like, "Oh, that there it is. That's what she's talking about, the Upside Down right there." So,
Yes.
okay. Well, with that, let's dive into the news. Up first, we knew that Star Wars: A New Hope was going to return to theaters in 2027 for the 50th anniversary, and now we've got a little bit more detail. And on the official Star Wars site, they announced that on February 19th, 2027, that Star Wars will be back in theaters. And this is interesting. They've said that part of Lucasfilm's year-long 50th anniversary celebration, a newly restored version of the classic Star Wars, in parens 1977 theatrical release, later renamed Star Wars: A New Hope, will play in theaters for a limited time. And okay, this strongly suggests they are talking about a restored version of the original theatrical cut.
Yes. Mhm.
But there's still a little room for ambiguity here. Why couldn't they just say a newly restored version of the original classic Star Wars and eliminate any doubt in all this? I mean, I believe that's what they mean there. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, why would you say later rename Star Wars: A New Hope? But it better be this because it seems like it's gotten everyone's hopes up that that's what they're going to go to see in theaters in February of 2027. But how do you take that?
Oh, yeah, and I went on kind of a deep dive into that because those few words, theatrical release, really, like you said, it's like, okay, what are they getting at here? And so, anytime I would put this into like a Google search, it would constantly come up with, yes, this is going to be the newly restored original 1977 theatrical cut.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so that's what keeps coming up in the searches, so I'm assuming that that's what they mean.
The only problem with that is that that's a Google AI bot that is that's basically taking everyone else's websites that have interpreted this and basically picking up on that.
Good
And so
point.
the AI is only as good as everybody else's interpretation on that. It can't do better because it's just generative text, right? And
Yes.
so, if this is not the case, and now Lucasfilm has not come out and said anything different to contradict anyone's understanding about this. So if this is not this, then it's on them. I'll say this. I would have been fine with the most recent edition of A New Hope being the one that we're going to theaters to see. Going to see any Star Wars movie in the theater is just like the ultimate. It's the best in this. But so many people are looking forward to having that original experience again. I'm really going to be fascinated to see what that comes out like, because I'm just thinking, so many things that people don't like are the Jabba the Hutt scene type of a
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
But let's not forget, it's and they don't care necessarily for, Han not, Han shot first is what they want. That
Right.
type of thing like that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
you're also not getting the Millennium Falcon blasting out of the spaceport. You're not getting the lead up in Mos Eisley. You're not getting the ships above Mos Eisley. You're getting the old version of the Death Star battle, which is fine. A lot of people, that's what they want to see. They've got the nostalgia for that. There's been so many changes beyond just what we saw in the special edition, that between when this was released in 1977, even over the next 2 years, there was changes made to that movie. So at any rate, I'm really curious as to what that's going to look like when we get to theaters in February of
Me
2027.
too. Yes, and I'm so here for it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I am the nostalgia sucker for sure, because the way that I look at it, Dennis, is that I can get all those other versions anytime I want to. I
Hmm.
mean, we can just get right onto Disney Plus and we can watch what's there. And yes, I appreciate the improvements that have been made. But for me, I think a lot of it is that number one, I'd love to see it up on the big screen because
Yeah.
I haven't seen the original since I was that little, 7 or 8 years old when it first came out, and it was my very first movie ever. So, I'm kinda curious to see what my memory is like. It's to test my memory against what I think I remember about the movie, and of course, we've seen so many different, like you were just pointing out, the comparisons of apples to apples, like, okay, this scene with the Millennium Falcon versus this scene, or this scene of Jabba the Hutt versus no Jabba the Hutt. But for me, it's yeah, I'm so about that nostalgia trip, and I'm so looking forward to it. So I really hope that that's the version that they're gonna show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they just did this in wherever it was in England. It was the
Yeah, yeah.
BBC, I think, or someone, I can't remember, the British Film Institute. I can't remember exactly who it was over there that did it. And a lot of reports was like it's like a completely different movie because you don't realize how much stuff was fixed or changed over time. And I
Mhm,
don't know. I mean, I on some level appreciate George Lucas's attempt to quote unquote improve the movie because it wasn't the vision he had. He did what he could with the technology that was available at the time. And
mhm.
we've talked about the Light and Magic series that's been on Disney
Yes.
Plus. It talks about everything they had to go through, and they moved mountains to make that movie possible. And I don't want to minimize their efforts there, but I just think for overall, I think it's improved the storytelling of the movie. It's just when they say, when the Millennium Falcons pulled aboard the Death Star, its markings match those of a ship that's blasted its way out of the Mos Eisley spaceport. Well, now we actually get to see it, in the special
Mhm,
edition and those type of
mhm,
things, which I appreciate. Yeah, I could have done without the Jabba the Hutt scene. I could see why they wanted to put it in there, but to me, that's like the only real egregious change that they made. But taste is individualized and everyone's got their own preferences. But so no, it'll be cool to see. Like I said, I would have been fine seeing whatever version they wanted to put in theaters, but I'll definitely be there when it happens. And the other thing that blows my mind is a lot of people are like, why isn't this coming out in May? Star Wars released in May. Guys, we're getting a Star Wars movie in
oh
May.
my gosh.
It's
Yeah.
Starfighter. They're not going to put two Star Wars movies in theaters in May.
Yeah.
That's why would they look? We're all smart people, but there's some people that would get confused as to what's going on. And so they got to put some distance between them. This is probably going to be out in theaters for a week or two, and then they'll take it out of the theaters, and then we'll get Starfighters in May. And so yeah, we'll have plenty of Star Wars that year to watch.
Well, what I think is really smart about putting it in February is just the fact that they're really marketing this as a full year of that 50-year celebration, the
Hmm.
anniversary celebration. So why not spread it out and savor the flavor, if you will, over the entire year and start it out in the beginning of the year with what started it all. I mean, this is the DNA of what Star Wars is. So why not? I
And
love
we
it.
got to believe that Star Wars Celebration is in April is going to
Oh
be
gosh.
huge on all this stuff. I suspect there'll be
Oh yeah.
showings of this cut everywhere in LA at
Mhm.
the time. I mean, we talked about this before, and I hope we get to go see the at the Chinese theater. or El
Yes,
Capitan,
yes,
or wherever it was shown first
please.
back in the day. That would be incredible. I hope so, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah, 2027 is gonna be an amazing year for Star Wars, that's
Indeed.
for sure. I mean, every year is, but it's just a little bit more special.
Oh yeah, 50 years.
Yes.
This is gonna be something.
It's crazy.
Okay. Well, let's get on to some more news. And we've got Daisy Ridley was asked about the hunt for Ben Solo and when she heard about that. So she was doing an interview with IGN and she was asked there's a couple of different things to talk about from this interview, but the first is what she knew about the hunt for Ben Solo. And so she said when asked whether she was aware of it before the recent news came out, she said, "I knew a piece of it. I heard rumblings. I have lots of friends who are crew, so things always travel like that. But whoa, when the story came out, no, I was like, oh my god!" And it was him that said it, right? She was referring to Adam Driver. And then, when she was kind of pressed on it, she talked a little bit about the fan support for it, and she said, "I do love when there's a collective of positivity." And then she went on, "The way the internet seems to have rallied to try and get it to happen, I think, one, it's fantastic for us all. It's good for us all to be united about something in a really positive way. Obviously, everyone knows he was a very popular character, but it was also lovely to think, wow, people really, really care about and want this. I like it. I like when people join forces, excuse the pun, from all around the world, all different sorts of people. I just love that the Star Wars fandom is such a huge and gorgeous array of different points of view and different people. And the fact that everyone is really behind this thing, I think, is just sort of lovely in a time that is so, we'll just say, bleeping nuts for
There you go.
probably every single person on this earth. I think is wonderful. So I was surprised and honestly I felt joyful about how it went down. So that was cool. I mean, I guess why wouldn't she know about this? If Kathleen Kennedy's going to pull her in and have a conversation with her in advance about doing a new movie starring her, why wouldn't if this was a thing, have come up at some point? But interesting, she never heard from Kathleen Kennedy. She heard it from other people on the crew. But what's your takeaway from all that?
Well, first of all, I can just hear Daisy saying all of this in her bubbly, lively self, and she's just such a joy. I just love her to death. And I really appreciate how the fact that she didn't really hype the movie or even promise anything about it. She just kind of celebrated the fans, you know. She just
Yeah,
focused on the joy of everyone coming together around something that they care about. And to me, that shows that she understands and really appreciates the way that Star Wars has this ability to bring people together, even if it's a story that never actually happened, you know, or was never going to be made or wasn't ever actually made. But the joy just is just infectious. She's just, yeah, I just really appreciate that about her. And she's not, you know, saying one thing either positively or negatively necessarily about the the act itself of making the movie, and that's what I think I appreciate the most. I
yeah.
guess you can call it sidestepping, but I think in this case, it's more pure than that.
Well, look, I don't really know anything about her relationship with Adam Driver. To the extent that they're friends. She and John Boyega were all over the place being friends while these movies were being made. And I
Sure.
saw their social most PETA posts where they're calling each other peanut and the like. When it was, it was always fun to watch. Before the Force Awakens came out and through the Rise of Skywalker, and so, but she and Adam Driver were the two big stars of the Rise of Skywalker, and so at any rate, I like to see that she's that supportive of it. I like to see that it means that much to her that fans wanted to see this happen, especially since, and look, I mean, I don't want to minimize it. There is a very vocal minority online on social media that will denigrate the sequel trilogy. If I'm being honest, yeah, it is the most flawed of the three trilogies between the original, the prequel, and the sequel trilogies and stuff like that. But that's not to say that there aren't things from those movies that people like. I mean, for a lot of people, that was their first. These movies were their first Star Wars movies. These were the characters they
Right.
got to know. You and I are original trilogy fans. We have the privilege of being able to say we were there from day one. We wear it as a badge of honor. Not everyone has that, and so the other thing is that she's right. I mean, Star Wars fans can give each other so much grief, but
True.
they're over anything. If you
Mhm.
like this, then you're not a real Star Wars fan. If you think this, then you're not a real Star. Which the gatekeeping can get out of control. But there was a groundswell of support for the hunt for Ben Solo. It doesn't
Oh,
seem to
yeah.
have changed anything. anything is possible. It could come up in the future. We'll see. I mean, I kind of doubt it at this point because I think everyone who's attached to that's pretty busy these days, and so the likelihood of it happening anytime soon is not great. But like I said, never say never. But anyway, it's cool to see that she was that excited about it. You know, we always say it's, you know, you don't have to be a Star Wars fan to make a good Star Wars movie, but it's always really cool when it happens.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. Okay. But then naturally, the topic shifted in that interview to the status of the Rey movie, the new Jedi Order movie. And she basically said, honestly, there are scripts that I read 5 years ago, and now I've gone, oh, maybe they will actually happen. She said of many non-Star Wars projects she's been attached to, including We Were the Dead. I think over the years, I've learned how the reality of getting a film made is so massive. The hurdles are vast, but with this, and she's referring to the Rey movie particularly, I know the incredible voices and creatives are part of it, and I know the wait will be worth it.
Mhm.
So, what do you make of all that?
Well, I think this definitely points a lot more positivity towards the idea that it will be happening.
Yeah.
And even if it's just wishful thinking on Daisy's part, I mean, just that very, very last line, I know the wait will be worth it. It's
Mhm.
not saying, the wait, hopefully we'll get this. And, it's not just all hopes and dreams and rainbows. It's, yeah, this is going to happen. It's almost like she let something slip, but didn't at the same time. Kind of thing.
Well, it was last year at this time, she was expecting to see a script imminently.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Gosh, it's
and
been a
so
year already. Holy cow.
yeah, no kidding, I couldn't believe that when I looked it up. And so which just makes me wonder, okay, this movie, she's still talking about in that way, but I mean, okay, there's the beginning of her statement makes me doubt it. The ending of her statement makes me believe it. Honestly, there are scripts that I read 5 years ago and 5 years ago, okay? And now I've
Oof.
gone, oh, maybe they will actually happen. Maybe they will actually happen. So there's doubt right there. But then she says, but with this particularly, I know the critical voices and creative part of it, and I know the wait will be worth it, which is optimistic.
Mhm.
So it's whatever is going on with this movie, whatever is going behind the scenes that they cannot get a script to tell the story that they want is some sort of an issue.
Right.
And so I don't know what that is. I mean, what is it that they can't get across to their script writers to get this done, to get this over the finish line? If that
Right.
because that's the only explanation I can come up with at this point. Because they've got
Mhm.
her on board. They've had a
Mhm.
director on board forever. We haven't heard anything about it's just the writers that keep changing.
Right, right. And she's definitely being very gracious by saying,
Yeah.
I understand the reality of getting a film made is so massive. There's so many
Yeah.
things you have to jump over, and that's probably what she's alluding to, is the writing,
Right.
I would
And
assume. Yeah.
and obviously, and the stakes are so much bigger with Star Wars when it
Oh,
comes to
yeah.
it. I mean, you don't get a Star Wars movie right and you'll never hear the end of it. And
Exactly.
so, so I understand why Lucasfilm would be cautious with, and Disney for that matter, be cautious of getting something because they just cannot afford to get one of these things wrong.
Mhm.
And so, but hey, we got two Star Wars movies coming in the next couple of years, so maybe that will, depending on their success, that could breathe new life into the project. We'll find out.
Yeah, we can hope.
All right. Well, moving on over in some comic news, we're getting a new limited series, 5-issue miniseries from Marvel that will be served as a prequel to the upcoming animated series Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord. And this will be called Shadow of Maul. So
Confusing?
the
Sure. No,
yeah,
never.
absolutely. Yeah, we're getting Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord, the animated series, and Shadow of Maul as the comic series. But anyway, this is going to be written by Benjamin Percy, and it will have art by, I'm going to do my best here, Medevek Musabekov.
Sounds
I'm going to
good.
live with that. Okay. Who has been doing the work on Star Wars Jedi Knights. This is arriving in March, more specifically. Issue 1 comes out on March 4th. And then the brief description they give is that the upcoming animated show, Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord, reveal Maul's plan to rebuild his criminal syndicate on Janix, a planet untouched by the Empire. The Star Wars Shadow of Maul comic series introduces this new setting and cast, including Captain Brander Lawson and his partner, a droid nicknamed Two Boots, as they investigate shadowing dealings on Janix. And it's been described as having some sort of a noir tone, and it's going to be in a very glitzy type of an environment with lots of neon alike. And so, at any rate, I'm curious about this. I couldn't tell from the description how much of Maul we're actually going to get in this, and if the whole thing that it's called Shadow of Maul is suggesting that it's really not going to have him in it. It's just going to be setting up like this environment for Maul to come take over. But what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, especially from the covers that we see here, there's one specifically that shows Lawson's face on half and then Maul's face on the other half. And the
Yeah,
panels that we got are, they're definitely very shadow oriented and kind of, in those back alley kind of feelings. But I'm really hoping that it's a nice blend and that we do get to see at least some of Maul. But I mean, that's what he does best, right? I mean, he's always behind the scenes doing the shadow things and the shadow collective and then crimson dawn eventually. And so I'm hoping that this will have a good balance, because it does say it's a story about cops, criminal syndicates, a neon lit shadowed allied city that hides many sins and secrets. So it does
yeah,
kind of sound like this Lawson and this Two Boots, which is kind of fun.
yeah,
Different kind of droid. Can't really place what type of droid this is. It doesn't really look like a protocol droid, and it doesn't really look like it's almost like a cobbled together kind of thing, which is kind of cool, because if it's more of a specialty droid, that's even better. But their color schemes match. Did you notice that? Like Lawson's wearing kind of
yeah.
the turquoise and gold, and so is Two Boots.
Yeah, this droid he's unique, but he seems very much inspired by other droids we've seen in Star Wars. He doesn't feel like a whole, cut from whole cloth in this case.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about maybe some of the security droids that Maul and Savage Opress destroyed on that one space station when they came back in Clone Wars.
Hmm.
And other droids that we've seen in security roles in the Clone Wars elsewhere, things like that. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we'd all love something about Maul, but I wonder how much of Maul they can give us in this
Hmm.
without interfering in the series
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
thing. And if they want to establish the environment in some of the gangs, that's great. I mean, I'm excited to read this regardless of whatever it is, but it's it's something that's going to be it's something that's going to definitely, get my attention come March. But it also makes me wonder, okay, when is the Maul series actually coming out? If this comic is not debuting to March, uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's monthly or biweekly or what, but
Hmm.
it would suggest it's not coming out until at least the summer. If
Right.
this is not coming out to March sometime, and I guess
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting it earlier than that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm wondering if this is just supposed to fill in the gaps until then. I mean, I'm assuming
Mhm.
that that's kind of its purpose, and sort of giving fans a little bit of an appetizer, if you will, for some mall, which I'm always here for, because I love me some mall. But I'm really excited about this, because you think about that from I always think of Maul as Sisyphus, and I'm pretty sure it was Sam Witwer that said that about him in the beginning anyways, is that he's always rolling that boulder up the hill only to have it fall all the way back down again. And so we've seen that so many times with him. And so for him to pick a world that's off the Empire's radar, like Janix, just makes sense that he would just sort of, collect his pieces and pick up the pieces of what he had lost and then go into hiding to try to rebuild it. So I'm really hoping that this sets the tone for what we're going to see in the series, as far as maybe even the very first breadcrumbs of Crimson Dawn, which is super exciting to think about. But I did think about, for Janix, we've never heard of this planet before, and it does sound a lot like Ferrix, even though it's not spelled with two N's like Ferrix would be spelled with two R's. So I'm wondering if they're sister planets in the same part of the galaxy. Did you think about anything like that?
No, that hadn't occurred to me, but that does raise an interesting possibility. I mean, we have how many, you know, tween type planets, Dantooine, Mantooine. you know,
Right.
all those in there. So maybe that is another planet naming convention. That's definitely a possibility that you bring up there. But
So yeah, we'll see.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, got one last story for this week's news, and I had not heard anything about this until it was over. But we have a new record for Star Wars memorabilia and the price it fetches at auction. And this would be for the original painting that introduced Star Wars to the world, and more specifically, you all will recognize this image, but maybe not specifically. But it was a painting done by Tom Jung, and it was later recreated for the classic Star Wars poster that we're all familiar with. Think of Luke holding the lightsaber up over his head, and Leia kind of being wrapped around his leg at the bottom, and
Mhm.
Darth Vader in the
Mhm.
background with tons of X-wings. But this was a painting that he did that was used in advertisements in newspapers all over the place. And Gary Kurtz had this painting. He hung it up in his office for the longest time, but then passed it down to his daughter. And the Kurtz family just recently put it up for auction with a starting bid at $1 million, and it went for 3.875. I mean,
Yeah. Whew.
crazy. Like I said, and it was at a heritage house here in the Dallas area. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I was like, oh, look, I know they don't just let anyone in to see this, but that's one of those things that we've been talking about a lot when it comes to these auctions. It's like it would be really cool if they could make these things like available to the public for viewing before they actually sell them off. And I would
Yes.
love to have gone down and seen this if that had been the case. But uh I mean, crazy on here. I mean, I've got a copy of the poster that's based off this hanging up in my room that I'm talking in right now. But again, just the fact that this thing fetched that much money, that's like Picasso money. That's a
Yes.
that's a huge amount of money. That's crazy.
Well, that just shows, like we've said before, just the love of Star Wars. And, the people that are spending this kind of money that are Star Wars fans, whew, that's just crazy money. Just crazy money. And it makes me wonder what was the impetus for the Kurtz family to decide to put it up for sale? Why not just keep it forever or make it, as Gary passed it down to his daughter, why not make it a family heirloom? What was the impetus for, like, deciding, "Oh, this is the time to sell this now," and I don't expect you to have the answer, I'm just wondering.
No, but I think we also have to think of some few things. One, I have no idea what the financial condition of the Kurtz family is.
Sure.
And this kind of came down to like we were talking about the Darth Vader lightsaber when it was going up for auction. It's like, if I had this, what would I do with it? I've got something of such immense value and I'm just keeping it in my house. And
Yeah.
I can't just freely show it to people because what would you cost you to insure something like that, for one
Right,
thing?
that's
And
true. Mhm.
and two, it's it's yes, that's incredibly cool to have, but what kind of things could I do with my life if I had the money instead? And so, like I said, I don't know what their financial condition is. I don't know, if he was successful enough that they've got, you know, generational type wealth or not, or if this is money that's going to change their lives. A lot of them put kids through college and things like that. So,
Sure.
I get it. We all, to me, family heirlooms are great, but perhaps they're even better when they don't have millions of dollars attached to them because
Mhm.
you, you, there's always going to be that guilt, I think, that would follow people around if you had something that valuable. There's sentimental value and then there's, fiscal, financial type, actual real world value to these things. And, you know, grandpa's pocket watch, yeah, maybe it's worth a couple $1,000s, but it's not, and that might be tempting to someone to sell. But when it's millions,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
there's, that's it's almost unfair at some point to keep passing that unless you have other millions of dollars to pass down along with it. So there
That's a
isn't
good
that
point.
temptation to go with it. So I don't know. It's just when I think about those type of things, it's like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have something to pass down like that. But I'd rather have, I think, almost something that's got the stories behind it, that's got the, you know, your grandfather got this when he did X, Y, and Z, and then he passed down to his father, to me, and I took it with me to do such and such, and now I'm giving it to you, and I hope it brings you that type of fortune. And though that type of stuff. I mean, this is famous. It's a movie that he produced and got out there to the public, and it's valuable for that reason. In this case, and yeah, I'm sure it's got some sentimental value as well because it hung up in his office. But you know, you hang it in your house, and God forbid there's a bad storm that comes through and rips your roof off and ruins the thing.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
yeah, I don't
point.
know. It's just I could think of a lot of reasons why you might want to sell it. I mean, to me, it's this would be something that would be cool if I could get, if you could, and we've talked about this before as well. So you could donate it to a museum that could put on display so that everyone can enjoy it. And then they have the little plaque next to it, from the J. Krebs collection, on loan or
Mhm.
whatever like that. And so people understand where it came from, that you're making it available for them to see and that type of thing. But at the same point, it's just like, as cool as this is, I could buy a print of it and be just as happy having that hang up in my office.
Mhm. I wonder how big the original print was. Do you
Yeah,
have
I
any
don't know.
idea?
No, I don't. I mean, those typically are pretty decent size. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Well, we always think about this, and I'm gonna ask you this question. So is there a specific piece of art or type of art that you'd like to get your hands on if you could?
um, I don't know. You know, just falling back on exactly what I said, these things are really, really cool. And I think I would just as soon get like the prints that I can when I go to Celebration and I buy a print, one of the art show prints, and bring it home and frame it and put it on my wall. Not only am I getting a great piece of art that reflects something that we saw maybe in one of the movies or some of the themes we saw in the movies, but it also has attached to it the experience of being at Celebration and having met the
Mhm.
artist. And because I'm thinking I'm looking at my wall right now, and I've got a print from the 2017 Celebration hanging up behind me. It stars Vader as he's entering Cloud City with a bunch of stormtroopers at his back. And I remember meeting the artist. I remember all the people I met that Celebration. And I've got the Ray print from the 2022 Celebration in Anaheim, and I remember hanging out with you there. And yeah, and a lot of other things that happen there. And so it's great for the what's depicted in the art, but it also has got all those other memories around it. And so, like I said, if I was so wealthy that I could buy something like this, that would be different, I think, because then I could set up a gallery with it and adequately protect the thing. But I don't know, it almost feels a little bit like a burden to have that without all that other security.
Mhm. No, that's fair. Yeah, I'm thinking like if money was no object, kind of thing. But I actually thought about it and I thought about having one of Trisha Bigger's original sketches for some of like Padme Amidala's dresses. Big
Mhm.
surprise. My brain goes right to the costumes, right? But but I just think that would be really cool. Or something that Doug Chang, we've seen Doug Chang's sketches of different things that have evolved or have come to life since. And just hearing him talk about the creative process is always just so enchanted me. And just to have a piece of that, as I said earlier, almost like a piece of Star Wars DNA, that was
Uh,
something that was used creatively to then structure what we know and love. I just think that's such a cool idea.
yeah, I mean, it would be cool to like meet Doug Chang and have him like do a sketch for you. I think would be
Oh
fun.
gosh, that'd be so fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'd almost prefer that as opposed to one that was actually done for the movie. Besides, George Lucas probably has all those, and we'll
Yeah,
probably
I'm
go
sure.
find some of them in his Museum of Narrative Art that's going to be opening soon. So,
Yeah, there you go.
okay, well, this is a bit longer than usual than we do for the news, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up here for the week. Thank you all for joining us here on Podcast Stars as we got through the latest. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, and you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your podcaster of choice. And once you've done that, we appreciate your ratings, reviews. Of course, you can find all past episodes of the show over at retrozap.com. And yeah, as well as all the other shows that are on the network there. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online?
You got it, Dennis. We are so easy to find. We are on Facebook and Instagram, for example, at Podcast Stardust. And we are also on YouTube and YouTube Music. So you can head over to both of those and listen to your heart's content. And those also do support ratings, reviews, and you can share those out with your friends as well and subscribe to those. And we also maintain some Pinterest boards. So if you are in need of some fun Star Wars ideas, you can head on over there. And if you'd like to drop us a line at our email, you can do so at podcaststardust@gmail.com. We're still looking for listener questions. And when we have enough, we'll put them together in a listener question episode, or just let us know anything that's on your mind from any of the episodes that we've done. We just love to hear from you. And then if you would like to support the show even further, you can do so by picking up one of our items on our TeePublic store. And we do have 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun things. So if you want to hit up the link in our show notes, it'll take you right to where you need to go.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we'll be getting into the Clone Wars. And then on Wednesday, we are going to be concluding our Revenge of the Sith series with part 12. So finish up the movie. But with that, just want to say thank you all for listening to episode 977 of Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be